Welcome back, dear students. Today we are going to discuss the different types of tissue systems on the basis of their morphological features, development and function. It was Sachs who recognized three categories of tissue systems in plants, including epidermal tissue system, ground tissue system, vascular tissue system. Okay, here in the image you can see this is the transverse section of a leaf, and in this you can see there are three tissue systems: the epidermal tissue system, the ground tissue system in the form of mesophyll, and then you have the vascular tissue system in the form of the midveins. Okay, today our focus will be epidermal tissue system and the different structures which are associated with epidermal tissue system. So let's move on. एपिडर्मल टिश्यू सिस्टम इट ऑरिजिनेट्स फ्रॉम द आउटरमोस्ट लेयर ऑफ एपिकल मेरिस्टम. जो आपके पास एपिकल मेरिस्टम होता है एट द टॉप ऑफ प्लांट. द आउटरमोस्ट लेयर ऑफ दैट एपिकल मेरिस्टम इट फॉर्म्स द एपिडर्मल टिश्यू सिस्टम, and the epidermal tissue system it acts as the outermost covering of most plant parts which remain in contact with the environment. Okay, epidermal tissue system it forms the outermost covering of plant organs. The first subheading that we are going to discuss under epidermal tissue system is epidermis. The word epidermis is derived from two Greek words, epi which means upon and dermis means skin. Okay, so you can yourself understand what is the meaning of epidermis. It is like a skin on the plant organs. Epidermis acts as the outermost layer of cells. It is the outermost layer of cells, and usually it is single layered. Epidermis is single layered in most of the cases. But in some plant species it may be multi-layered. For example, in case of ficus leaf, the epidermis is two-layered, while as in case of peperomia and begonia, the epidermis is multi-layered in leaves. The epidermal cells they vary in their size and shape. These cells are compactly arranged and they form a continuous layer. Okay, but they are interrupted by stomata in case of leaves. In case of leaves, you will see that the epidermis is at some points interrupted by stomata. Okay, here you can see these are the epidermal cells, and at this point they are interrupted by the stomata. Sometimes the epidermal cells are separated by intercellular spaces. Example is in the petals of some flowers. Usually there are no intercellular spaces between the epidermal cells, but in some cases like in petals of some flowers, the epidermal cells they are separated by the intercellular spaces. And all the epidermal cells are parenchymatous and living. They possess protoplasm, they possess nucleus, and that is why they are living. The outer tangential walls of epidermal cells they are relatively thicker than the inner tangential walls. These are the outer tangential walls. They are thicker than the inner tangential walls. Okay, and each epidermal cell has a large central vacuole and a thin peripheral cytoplasm. This say for example this is the epidermal cell. It possesses a large central vacuole and a thin peripheral cytoplasm. And certain epidermal cells are differentiated into a variety of cell types to perform different functions. Now these are the adaptations. Okay, these are the distinct adaptations of epidermal cells so as to perform different functions. One such example is velamin. In the aerial roots of some plants, a number of epidermal cells they get modified and form an absorptive tissue, and this absorptive tissue helps these plants in the absorption of water from atmosphere. Example is orchids. This layer this represents the velamin. Okay, so you can say velamin is actually a modification of epidermal cells so as to absorb the water from the atmosphere. Another one is bulliform or motor cells. These are large epidermal cells of grass leaves. These cells are thin-walled and contain a big central vacuole which is filled with water. Here you can see these are the bulliform or motor cells, and these cells play an important role in the folding and unfolding of leaves. When these cells lose water, the leaves they fold. Okay, and when they absorb water, the leaves unfold. That means it helps in the rolling and unrolling of leaves, and this helps the plant to conserve water when there is least water in the environment. Another important thing that we are going to discuss that is cuticle and wax. Okay, so far we have discussed the epidermis. What is epidermis? Now cuticle and wax. Cuticle is a fatty substance which is known as cutin. Okay, it is a fatty substance which is deposited on the outer surface of epidermis of aerial plant parts. याद रखना, cuticle is actually a fatty substance which is known as cutin, and this cutin is deposited on the outer surface of epidermis. Here, this is the epidermis. Cutin is deposited on the outer surface of these epidermal cells. Okay, and you have to remember that cutin is present only in aerial parts, it is absent in roots. Okay, and structurally, cuticle consists of cellulose, lamellae, or you can say cellulose chains which are interrupted with pectic substances and cutin, or you can say it is a conglomerate of cellulose and pectin along with cutin. And usually cuticle is covered with wax. Okay, this is the another covering. Wax is the additional covering, it covers this cuticle. Okay, and this wax is deposited in the form of granules. You can find wax in the form of granules or rods, or in some cases the wax is in the form of semi-liquid masses. Okay, on the surface of cuticle. Some other substances besides besides the wax, which are deposited on the cuticle surface include oil, resin, silicone, and some salts. If the salts are made up of calcium carbonate, they are known as cystoliths. Example is ficus. And if the salts are made up of calcium oxalate, they are known as druses and raphides. Okay, you don't have to discuss what are druses and raphides. Simply, druses and raphides are the crystals which are made up of calcium oxalate. Okay, I will repeat this. Besides the wax which is deposited on the surface of cuticle, some other substances like oil, resin, silicone, and some salts are also deposited on the cuticle surface. And if the salts are made up of calcium carbonate, they are known as cystoliths. And if they are made up of calcium oxalate, they are specifically known as druses and raphides. Now the third structure associated with the epidermal tissue is stomata. Stomata are minute apertures which are present in the epidermis of leaves, and each stomata is composed of two bean-shaped guard cells which enclose a stomatal pore. You will see in the next slide. Okay, but in case of grasses, the guard cells are dumbbell-shaped. Okay, and the guard cells they possess chloroplasts and they help in the regulation of opening and closing of stomata. Okay, I will repeat. The minute pores which are present in the epidermis of leaves, they are known as stomata, and each stoma, which is a singular, okay, which is a singular of stomata, it is composed of two bean-shaped guard cells, and these guard cells enclose a stomatal pore. But in case of grasses, the guard cells are not bean-shaped, they are dumbbell-shaped, and the function of guard cells is that they possess chloroplasts, and because of those chloroplasts, they are able to regulate the opening and closing of their stomatal pore. This is a separate topic in physiology, how guard cells regulate the opening and closing of stomata. At this point of time, you are not required to discuss all those details. Okay, here you can see these are the stomata. Here we have the two kidney-shaped guard cells in case of dicots. In grasses, the guard cells are dumbbell shaped. Okay, when the guard cells lose water, their pore gets closed, and when they absorb water, their pore opens. And same is the case with the guard cells of these grasses. Sometimes a few epidermal cells in the vicinity of guard cells, they become specialized in their function and they become specialized in their shape and size, and they are known as subsidiary cells. Okay, here you can see few epidermal cells in the vicinity of guard cells, they become specialized in terms of their size, in terms of their structure, in terms of their shape, and they are known as subsidiary cells. Okay, and now all the things, the stomatal pore, the God cells, and the subsidiary cells, they are together known as stomatal apparatus. Stomatal apparatus is actually the stomatal pore, the God cells, and the subsidiary cells. In some xerophytes, the stomata are sunken in grooves, and it helps the plant to reduce transpiration. Example is nerium. Here you can see this is, say for example, the epidermis. The stomata are not present on the surface, they are present in grooves. Okay, they are present in grooves. Sorry, I will make it more clear. This is the epidermis, and this is a groove. Stomata are present in these grooves. Okay, they are present in these grooves, and this helps the plant to reduce transpiration. The stomata are absent in case of roots. You have to remember this point. Now, another structure associated with the epidermal tissue system is trichomes. Trichomes are actually the epidermal outgrowths which are present temporarily or permanently on all plant parts. And these trichomes, they may be unicellular or multicellular, and they vary in shape and size in different species. And on the basis of shape and size, they perform different functions, and accordingly we have different types of trichomes. Hairs, first one is hairs. These are the elongated outgrowths of epidermal cells, and depending upon whether these hairs are made up of single cells or many cells, there are two types of hairs, unicellular hairs. And unicellular hairs are further divided into glandular hairs and non-glandular hairs. Glandular hairs are present in Urtica dioica. The stinging hairs of Urtica dioica, they are glandular. And non-glandular hairs are present in the Gossypium, okay, and cannabis. Silicified hairs of cannabis represent non-glandular hair, and the hairs of Gossypium on the leaf surfaces is another example of non-glandular hair. Then multicellular hairs, those hairs which are made up of more than one cells, and these cells may be either arranged in one row like this, or they may be arranged in more than one rows. I will make it more clear. They may be arranged in either one row or more than one rows. Okay. And these multicellular hairs, they may be either branched, example is Vithiana, or unbranched, example is Tridax. Okay, simply you have to remember that multicellular hairs are those hairs which are composed of more than one cells. Okay, and these cells, these hairs may be branched or unbranched. Another type of another type of trichome is known as scales. They are also called paltate trichomes because they possess a multicellular discoid head borne on a short stalk. Here you can see this is multicellular discoid head which is composed of many cells. It is present on a small stalk. They are known as scales. Another type of trichome is water vesicles or bladders. These are swollen bladder-like trichomes which are meant for storage of water. Okay. Now the function of trichomes. What is the main function of trichomes? Trichomes act as insulators by keeping frost away from leaf cells. Here, say this is the leaf and it possesses trichomes. These trichomes, they protect the inner these cells from frost by keeping frost away from the leaf. Okay. They help reduce evaporation by protecting the plant from wind and heat. These trichomes also protect the plant from wind and heat, and hence help the plant to preserve water. Okay, and in many cases, trichomes have been found to protect plants from herbivorous insects. And besides this, trichomes are also found to protect plants from radiation, particularly UV light. Okay, this is all about the epidermal tissue system. I hope you all understand this. Thank you and stay blessed.